Hey guys, Josh Gadamu here, and today I want to talk about can you copy a Gundam MSA action figure and make one from scratch? And I want to cover can, how, and should. So, first off, can you? Well, here's a nice quick answer. It's been done. This is a knockoff Zaku 1. It's from some no-name company. It doesn't have elbows or knees. They just straight copied an entire leg all by itself. It's kind of cheesy, but it totally exists. And there's a whole figure here. And he moves at the waist and at the shoulders. The joints are just, embedded or made out of the same plastic. They're kind of ugly and kind of horrible and kind of awesome all at the same time. My friend Smooth Toys actually has several of these. Now, also, once upon a time, at least, I ended up ordering mine from Italy, and they cost me a pretty penny, but I got these knockoff Zaku 2 MSAs that looked a lot like the original Zaku 2, green, except that they came in weird packaging, and they did have joints, except that the downside is, I have reviews for all of these, and there were some unique differences. They're actually very cool. But the joints were made out of this brittle, awful plastic. And so sometimes you would open the packaging only to find that the figure was already broken in its joints. Or you're like, oh cool, it bends at the elbow snap. And you're just looking, oh my goodness, why? Why? So what I ended up doing was stealing joints out of scrap figure parts in order to fulfill that, in order to make it work. Which was kind of a pain. So like here's a figure that's missing its joints, and they went into some of those knockoff figures because I wanted more variations in my troops. They're no longer in my collection as I changed around my collection, but they do exist. So can you? Yes, you can. In fact, Josh Cerna has been doing some things for quite a while with resin. This here is a GM Kai head. It's the GM head from the Gundam Fix Figuration figure, and I've embedded a little MSA antenna into it. It hasn't been painted yet, but resin often ends up with bubbles and needs to be have the holes filled and whatnot. But totally have a resin casted head here. And Josh Cerna has made several parts out of resin, including chests and other things. One of the things that he did make me were these half-track machine gun trucks. These actually, this is the authentic version, comes from the Robot Damashi GOG, which is about a $60 action figure. This is a cheap copy of it with resin. Resin is kind of expensive though, it takes time to cure. I had to do some filling of the holes. I didn't paint this, I dyed it and then stuck stickers on it. But I have a fairly cheap, fairly passable copy of this truck that otherwise would have been very expensive to have army built. Following this, I have a copy of the Damashi machine gun effect. The Damashi machine gun effect is awesome! And it plugs into this little hole because it has a little plug built into it. Made of hard plastic, different from the plastic of the machine gun effect. Well, I just copied that effect, I drilled it out, and it fits over the barrel of my knockoff truck. So, yeah, totally possible to mass produce things. Now that we've covered the how, or I suppose we'll keep covering the can it be done, I have been copying Type 61 tanks. Now these aren't very well done in some ways, but in some ways they are. Bringing us into the how. Can you? Yes, obviously. How? Well, you make silicone molds, and these work for the resin or for the hot glue or plastic injection molding, which is really what you would want to do. That's the GM Kai head deep inside there. You pour the resin in, it comes out the other spout. That means that you've filled it and you wait for it to cure. You take it out and you hope you got a good copy. Or with the hot glue, you take colored hot glue, like these white colored hot glue sticks. You inject it in there with a high temp hot glue gun, and they also come in bigger sticks, like bigger diameter, so for bigger things. My tanks were built using thick hot glue sticks. So, just when it comes out the other side, then you wait and let it cool, and then you pull out a GM Kai head. This is one that hasn't been trimmed yet, so it's got the fill hole. The other one broke off when it was being brought out. It has flashing from where excess hot glue kind of just went crazy inside the mold. But you can see it there. That's a GM Kai head. And maybe this one's a good one once we remove all that stuff, or maybe it's a bad one. The hot glue is cheap enough just to make another. And then you drill a hole for the neck peg. And I've been doing this on the tanks. The tanks actually get some good detail, but some details don't come out very good. For instance, the antennas, forget it. This rail on the back did not come out at all. The treads come out a little wonky, and I've patched those a little bit and smoothed them out and whatnot. You can see some holes in the bottom of the tank, just imperfections where air collects. The top part's been real hit and miss. Some of these did have both cannons come out, but then they were very fragile and they broke. Still, I'm quite pleased with the detail. This is where my fill holes were, and it's caused quite a mess. So how you make a silicone mold, and you make sure you have fill holes and air holes. And here's an example of the tank in clear hot glue. The mold can break down, so this hole no longer develops because that piece came out. Some of that was my fault for cutting the mold open how I did. But this is a fill hole, this is an air hole, this is a fill hole, this is an air hole, and sometimes I'll just alternate. I might bump into all four holes, which I need to. You got to cram a lot of stuff in there. So part of the how is what makes plastic injection molding difficult is you can only inject so much plastic before it starts to harden, limiting your size of things. So many hobbyist-sized things can only produce small things. It can't produce something very large. Fortunately, the Mobile Suit Action figures are rather small. Still, there's still challenges in that. Most of your homebrew, even if you build it yourself, plastic injection molding machines are very expensive. We're talking $300 to $600 just to build or to buy in the $600 category. And what plastics you can use is limited too. The Mobile Suit Action figures are made of a polyvinyl chloride, which is a chemical plastic. Hot glue is a thermoplastic. It heats up and it gets injected. There's other thermoplastics. I don't know very much about chemical plastics, but I know a fair amount about thermoplastics after a great deal of study. So I think that covers the can and how. This brings us into the should. Should gets kind of dicey. One, these are copyrighted works. They are probably patented somewhere, but they seem to have no U.S. patent laws guarding them. So maybe they have Japanese patents. I don't know. I couldn't find anything on packaging about U.S. patents or Japanese patents. They are copyrighted. So you definitely don't want to start copying these and throwing them up on eBay for people to purchase. By the way, this is again one of those machine gun effects. Yeah. Love it. But you can produce stuff in quantity, so that's kind of cool. So that aside, there's the cost of doing it. See, I think most people would be like, yeah, let's copy Zaku 2s. Zaku 2s can be expensive on eBay. They can be hard to find as time goes by. Some of these things get even harder to find. Think of Leos and GMs. Imagine if we could just make as many as we want. But there's some things that you'd have to keep in mind. One, you would have to paint the figure. Even, even this head. This head will have to be painted. The visor I've already done a little paint on just to help me, view it. And there's a vast number of molds if you're making a mold for each part. So this figure, because they cheated, this whole arm and hand is one mold. But if we look at our GM, and I apologize that this is a hodgepodge GM, but the foot is perpendicular. It means it's the same on both sides. That's one mold. That's two molds. These are different. So that's 3 and 4. This is a 5th mold, or whatever right torso goes there. The chest is a 6th mold. The shoulders are the same, so that would be a 7th mold. These are the same, 8th mold. These are not the same, so 9, 10, we have hands. 11, 12, we have a backpack, that's 13. Beam saber, 14, unless we manage to link that in. And the head, which is 15. So we have 15 different molds we'd have to build this figure, not counting the joints, which I'll get to here in a minute. So that means we need a lot of these. We need 15 of these cup molds. I get about 3 or 4. I suppose if we stretched it right, depending on keeping small parts in small molds, we could make 5, maybe 6 molds out of one package of mold, which is, like $30. But usually I get 3 or 4 of these. Okay? So if you're talking 15 or more, that's a lot. That's a lot. Break that down. There's $90 of silicone mold material needed to make the GM. There's a small ballpark. Now we run into the issue of joints. We can't do the joints in the same type of plastic. So really, when we mold the parts, we would have to pull the joints. Now, joints, I have a friend who theorizes he's found the right type of resin to make these joints, and I have seen joints produced on sprues that some seller for someone made replacement joints for somebody for some advanced mobile suit in action figures, and these ended up in my hands, but I never had the time to mess around with it because I'm not a fan of the advanced msia. I wish I had, but I just never did. Maybe Josh Cerna still has it. I don't know. I ended up trading it to him after years of just having it sit somewhere. So, hard joints, that's going to be a challenge. So you might be able to steal joints from something else. That's what I did to turn the knockoff Zaku 2s I was telling you about earlier into legitimate-ish figures. I had parts that actually had no joints. I just stole the joints out of them. See? Oh, by the way, the fun part is you could produce things in any kinds of colors you want. So, this is just fun. This is fun. What if we had some white Federation tanks? Or blue ones? That would be cool. Some of the colors could be ridiculous, but some of them could be really fun. Anyways, joints. You can also purchase joints on eBay or Amazon. These hobby kit sets that are just joints. That's all they are. Ball joints, other types of joints. I haven't worked with any of these. But in theory, you could produce all of your Mobile Suit in Action copied parts. And, by the way, you wouldn't have to use just resin or hot glue. I've actually found a plastic material that's supposed to be very similar to the PVC in texture, but it only comes in black. It only comes in black, which again, you're going to have to paint these figures. So, let's just say, yes, we decided that we wanted to make the GM or Zaku or Leo. I think Leos would be so cool to make in lots of different colors. And we started producing them, and we found hard plastic joints. The thing is, this is going to cost a fair amount of money. This is not something you would want to be like, hey, I'm going to produce one figure that looks like this. No, you would want to produce a fair number of figures. And these can break down, but you'll get a fair amount of copies out of them, and they're not hard to make another one. What would work best would be if some die-hard Gundam msia fans all agreed that they wanted to produce such and such thing. Let's produce a bunch of Leos, let's produce a bunch of GMs, or custom parts of this, or some Zakus, which I did copy the Zaku cables in hot glue, but they weren't durable enough to endure use. In general, it's cheaper for you to search and scour eBay for a Zaku, a GM, or a Leo. It just is. Bottom dollar, it's cheaper for you just to army build the old-fashioned way. But if enough people decided they wanted to do this, something awesome could be done, as long as it was a private group build, where, several people were investing in it, into the work being done, and it was just kept on the down low, and those who invested in it were the direct beneficiaries of it, and nothing ended up sold on eBay or Amazon or anything, you know, crazy like that, not even Etsy. Can, how, should. Should this be done? If you just want in one figure, or 3 figures, 6 figures, you might as well just spend that money getting those figures. But if there were some people who really wanted to get together and make it happen, and everybody got like 5 figures each, assuming, you know, that everything was doable in those numbers, it might be worthwhile. It might be. Truth is, I'm rather eccentric and somewhat crazy. Or very crazy and pretending to be eccentric. I'm not sure which. I'll let you know when we figure it out. I wish I could do this. I think it would be just like this badge I'd wear with pride. Made my own Gundam MSA copied figure. Yeah. In fact, I'm very proud of my tanks. I know, they're imperfect. But they're going to be battle scarred for Gundam Father of Peace, which means I didn't have to battle scar this guy, which is awesome. And I'm going to produce more of them, and I've had a lot of fun learning and going through the learning curve. This guy's going to get a replacement head. You know, I've got these additional machine gun weapon effects, including that one there. There's a lot of cool stuff that can be done by making copies of things, especially of figures that aren't being produced anymore. So, leave me a comment down below. Tell me your thoughts. If you could copy something and produce it in different colors, what would it be? Love to hear your thoughts on this. I'll see you guys later.